Wilt Chamberlain's career in the game of basketball is one of mythic proportions. A man who is still talked about today in NBA circles as a Paul Bunyan-like figure of the sport. Standing at a jaw-dropping 7'1" and possessing athleticism and jumping abilities never seen before by a player of that height, Chamberlain literally and figuratively was a giant amongst mere mortals on the basketball court. A man whose numbers long after he had retired from the game stood as tall as himself. And more importantly, a person whose sheer height, identity, and celebrity before even playing a second in the NBA or NCAA scared officials in both places so bad they changed numerous rules to prevent him from sabotaging the game itself. As a towering high school star at Overbrook High School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Chamberlain was regarded as one of the first prep basketball phenoms the country had ever seen. How dominant was the man whose friends dubbed him the Big Dipper? In a USA Today story from 2017, Wilt's high school coach Cecil Monteson recalls a game where Germantown High tried to have all 5 of their players on the floor guard Wilt at once to stop him. Chamberlain led Overbrook to a 56-3 record in his 3 years on varsity that included 2 city championships, averaging 37.4 points per game, and in the process breaking Tom Gola's high school scoring record with 2,252 points in his career. After arriving at Kansas University, Wilt's talent was on full display during the Kansas freshman varsity game, in which he compiled a stat line of 42 points, 29 rebounds, and 4 blocks against a 1955 Kansas varsity team that was picked to win its conference. In 1956, now able to play varsity under NCAA rules at the time, Wilt was about to unleash his game on a national audience, and people were afraid. In the same year, the NCAA changed 3 rules specifically because of Wilt leading up to the start of the 1956-1957 season. Rule number 1. That dunking free throws was banned. Then Kansas State head coach Tex Winter, yes, the same Tex Winter who drew the blueprints for Phil Jackson's triangle offense, witnessed Wilt taking off from the foul line and dunking the basketball. As a result, the NCAA outlawed it, and now players cannot cross the plane of the free throw line, even if your feet are not touching the ground until the ball hits the rim or passes through the basket. Winters also helped change rule number 2, which was that no longer could players inbound the ball from the baseline by throwing it over the top of the backboard. Wilt's teammates at Kansas could literally throw him the ball over the glass and he would catch it every time. But now the rule states that doing this becomes a violation. The third and most impactful rule that changed before Wilt played a second of basketball in college was the elimination of offensive goaltending. Since 1944, defensive goaltending had been illegal due to the impact George Mikan had, but now it went for the offensive side of the floor as well. In his prep career and freshman year at college, Wilt could simply jump when a teammate's shot was near the hoop and tap or dunk it in based off his height alone. Combine that with his jumping ability, and anything within his wingspan was easy money. This scared those in power, and the idea of Chamberlain grabbing and guiding the ball in from a miss on top of his scoring ability was going to be a downright problem for the game. Nowadays, the rule is if any part of the basketball is over the top of the cylinder, it is deemed offensive goaltending or basket interference. Of course, Wilt was not even affected in the slightest bit from these changes, as in 1956, he averaged 29.6 points per game and 18.9 rebounds per game, leading Kansas to the NCAA championship where they lost to North Carolina. Fast forward to 1964, where 5 years into the NBA, Wilt averaged over 35 points per game and over 20 rebounds per game each season, including a year where in 1961 he averaged a still NBA record 50.4 points per game in an entire season and 25.7 rebounds. The NBA realized it was too easy for Wilt to get in and out of the lane, and so they instituted the 4th and final rule change dedicated from Wilt, the widening of the lane from 12 to 16 feet. In 1944, due to the dominance of George Mikan, the league at the time expanded the lane from 6 to 12 feet. But 20 years later, Mikan's dominance was peanuts compared to Wilt, who could get in and out of the lane with ease due to his quickness and still post up near the basket and be outside the key. This rule was instilled to push Wilt farther out from the paint in order to avoid getting a 3 seconds in the key violation. And still, after all of that, 4 rule changes later, Wilt Chamberlain still finished as one of the most dominant forces basketball has ever seen. He averaged over 30 points per game for his entire career, finished as one of 6 players to have scored 60 points or more on more than one occasion, most points scored in a single half still with 59, most points scored as a rookie, and on top of everything, is still the only person to ever score 100 points in a single NBA game. Wilt Chamberlain, a giant in the game of basketball, who was so good they had to change the game just because of him.